3 years ago, just after my daughter was born, my husband disappeared as if he had never existed. That same day, when my baby and I were at our weakest, my mother-in-law forced us out of the house. For 3 long years, I struggled to survive on my own, and then one ordinary afternoon, as my little girl and I waited for a city bus, a sleek black car stopped in front of us. A familiar voice said, "Get in, Nia. I need to tell you something important." It was my Aunt Celeste, and the truth she was carrying would change my life forever. The sharp scent of disinfectant filled Nia Walker's lungs as she slowly opened her eyes. Pale walls surrounded her, and every part of her body felt sore and heavy. The healing marks from surgery ached deeply, but the moment she turned her head, the discomfort faded into the background. In the small hospital crib beside her lay a tiny baby wrapped in pink. Her daughter, Zoe, was safe. Nia reached out and gently touched her cheek, and warmth rushed through her heart. This child was a miracle, the result of her love with Marcus. But where was Marcus? Since the rush to the hospital the night before, she hadn't heard a single word from him. His phone went straight to silence. Nia tried to reassure herself. He must be overwhelmed with work, she told herself. He had talked for months about a massive project that demanded all of his attention. Surely he would arrive soon, smiling, amazed, ready to hold his daughter. She picked up her phone again. No messages, no missed calls, only the dark screen staring back at her. A quiet worry crept through her chest, mixing with the joy she had felt a moment earlier. The nurse informed her she would be discharged that day. This place couldn't keep patients long, especially without a clear reason. With Marcus still absent, she gathered her strength and prepared to leave. Her belongings fit into one small bag. Baby clothes, one extra outfit for herself. Holding Zoe carefully against her chest, she paid the final fees with savings that were already running low. Marcus hadn't sent her the usual support money that month. Still, she clung to the idea that he was simply overwhelmed. She ordered a ride and entered the address of the house she had shared with Marcus for 2 years. Her fingers shook slightly. The ride felt endless. Zoe slept peacefully against her, unaware of the storm silently building. Outside the window, Atlanta moved on, fast and bright. Nia imagined Marcus opening the door, smiling wide, lifting Zoe in his arms. But when the car stopped in front of the tall gates of the elegant house in Buckhead, nothing felt warm or welcoming. The yard was silent. The garage was empty except for her father-in-law's car. No sign of Marcus. She stepped out, holding her baby with one arm and her bag with the other. She rang the doorbell. Once, twice. The door finally opened, and there stood her mother-in-law, face cold and hard. Behind her, her father-in-law stood with crossed arms, quiet and distant. "Is Marcus here?" Nia asked softly. Instead of an answer, her mother-in-law snapped back, "Why are you asking about him?" Confused and shaken, Nia showed her the baby. "I just gave birth. This is Zoe, your granddaughter." But instead of warmth, she saw only rejection. Her mother-in-law stepped back as if something was wrong. "That baby is no longer our concern. Neither are you." Nia felt the ground slip beneath her. "What are you talking about? Where is Marcus?" "He's gone," the older woman said sharply. "He left this house, and you're the reason." Tears filled Nia's eyes. She couldn't understand. "We were waiting for our baby together. He loved me." Her mother-in-law continued coldly, blaming her for every problem the family had faced since the marriage. According to her, Marcus had walked away the night before, saying he couldn't live like this anymore. Nia shook her head. It made no sense. "Please let me come in, I'm exhausted. Zoe is just a newborn." That was when her father-in-law finally spoke, his voice flat and distant. "You don't live here anymore. Marcus has ended the marriage. You need to leave." The words hit her like ice. "When?" "He told me nothing. I have no papers." "You don't need any," her mother-in-law replied. "His decision is final." A moment later, she returned, dragging Nia's large suitcase, and dumped it open on the porch. Clothes and baby things spilled onto the floor. When Nia tried to stop her, her strength failed her. "Go, take the child and leave," her mother-in-law barked, pushing her backward. Nia nearly fell, clutching Zoe tightly. The baby began to cry. Startled by the sudden movement, Nia begged for mercy, asking where she was supposed to go, still weak and barely able to stand. She looked at her father-in-law, searching for even a trace of kindness, but his eyes were empty. "That's not our problem," he said. Her final bag was thrown onto the lawn beside her. Then came the last words she would hear from that house. "Leave before I call security. You are no longer welcome here." With her heart in pieces, Nia had no choice but to submit. She had no strength left to argue or resist. Fighting the sharp pain in her body, she knelt down and, while holding Zoe close with one arm, tried to stuff their scattered clothes back into the suitcase with the other. From the doorway, Mr. and Mrs. Thorne watched her without emotion, as if her suffering meant nothing to them. When the suitcase finally closed, barely holding together, Nia dragged it toward the gate. She didn't even feel anger anymore, only emptiness, only a deep, aching confusion. She turned her head one last time, wishing this was all some terrible dream. But then the heavy door slammed shut, and the sound of the lock sliding into place echoed through the night. Nia sank onto the pavement outside the gate. Beneath the dull glow of a streetlight, she held Zoe close, trying to soothe her tears while silently breaking inside herself. What had really happened? Why had Marcus disappeared? Why had they been so merciless? She was alone in a city that felt suddenly enormous and unforgiving. Her parents were long gone. Extended family was nothing more than distant memories. The house behind the gate, once her shelter, now felt cold and threatening, like a place she had never belonged. Then she heard the sound of the garage opening. Headlights pierced the darkness. A car rolled forward. It was Mr. Thorne behind the wheel. Nia shot to her feet, her heart racing. For one hopeful second, she thought they had changed their minds. But the car drove straight toward her and past her. In the passenger seat sat Mrs. Thorne, silent and unmoved. And then in the back seat, Nia saw him. Marcus. Her world froze. He looked straight at her and at the baby in her arms. Their eyes met in that single, unbearable moment. Nia wanted to call his name, to run to him, to ask 1,000 questions all at once. But no sound came out. His face was pale, his eyes empty, filled not with anger, but fear. He looked like a man trapped, powerless, afraid. Then he turned away and lowered his head. The car sped off and vanished into the night, leaving Nia standing in silence with nothing but Zoe's cry and the cold air around her. Now she understood. Marcus had not abandoned her. He was still there. And that truth was more frightening than believing he was gone. 3 years passed. For Nia, they felt like 3 lifetimes. She never went back, never tried to contact his family again. That look in Marcus's eyes had said everything. Something wasn't right. He couldn't protect her, and his family had already made their choice. The first year was the hardest. With what little money she had left, Nia rented a tiny room on the south side of Atlanta. It was barely big enough to hold a bed, a small table, and a crib. The kitchen was a single shelf. The bathroom was shared. The walls were thin, and every time Zoe cried at night, someone would pound angrily from the other side. Nia would whisper apologies through the wall while rocking her child and wishing she could be invisible. She sold the last thing of value she owned, her wedding ring. With that money, she bought baby supplies and groceries. There was no time for heartbreak. Zoe needed her. So Nia worked. She took sewing jobs from neighbors. Her fingers became rough, often pricked by needles late into the night, as the old second-hand sewing machine rattled beside her. In the mornings, when she could, she helped at a small cafe run by a kind woman named Ms. Carroll. She cleaned, cooked, washed dishes, and earned just enough to keep going. Her clothes faded with time, but they were always clean. Nia changed. She was no longer the woman she had once been. She became a survivor, a mother, a fighter. Zoe grew like a small light in the dark. She was bright and full of life, with a face that mirrored both her parents. Whenever Nia looked into her daughter's eyes, she saw strength, but she also saw quiet questions waiting to be asked, And one day, they were. While playing with her only toy, a worn little doll, Zoe looked up and said, "Mommy, my friends get picked up by their dad. Where is my daddy? Doesn't he love me?" Nia's heart twisted. She pulled Zoe close and answered softly, "Daddy had to go work far away, sweetheart. Very far. He's working so you can have a better life." "When will he come back?" Zoe asked. Nia kissed her forehead. "Daddy loves you very much. And Mommy loves you too. One day, when the time is right, he will come back." It was a lie, but it was a gentle one. A lie meant to protect a child's heart from pain she was too young to carry. Deep inside, Nia didn't know if Marcus would ever return. She didn't even know if he was safe. 3 years had passed with no message, no support, no sign of life. That afternoon had been exhausting. She had too many orders to finish and little time to spare. She planned to drop off materials and go straight home, but Zoe insisted on coming with her. So she did. Now they stood at a crowded bus stop under the burning heat. The air was thick and heavy. Zoe clung to her and complained softly, "Mommy, I'm hot. I want ice cream." "Just a little longer," Nia said gently. "When we get home, we'll buy a popsicle." She counted the money in her pocket, enough for the bus and a small treat. Tiny victories mattered now. She shifted Zoe onto her shoulder and waited among strangers rushing through their own lives. She felt small, unnoticed, just another person trying to survive in a massive city. Then, suddenly, a sleek black car pulled up in front of them. It didn't belong there. Dark windows, polished doors. Nia stepped aside, assuming it was a mistake, but the window slowly rolled down. Inside sat a woman who looked both powerful and familiar. Dressed in an elegant suit, her sharp gaze locked onto Nia's face. Recognition flickered across her expression. "Nia!" The sound of her name made Nia freeze. It was her aunt, Celeste, her mother's sister, the woman who had lived abroad for years, the one she had last seen at her mother's funeral. Aunt Celeste leaned forward in disbelief. "What are you doing out here, with a child, standing on the side of the road like this?" Before Nia could answer, the door opened. "Get in, now," her aunt said firmly. "With the baby." Nia hesitated. 3 years alone had taught her to trust no one, but something in her aunt's voice left no room for questions. "I just arrived today," Aunt Celeste continued. "I went to your old address first. A neighbor said you'd been gone for years. I've been searching everywhere for you." Her eyes burned with urgency. "I have something you need to hear," she said quietly. Nia finally stepped inside. The door closed, sealing off the noise of the street. Cool air washed over her. The scent of expensive perfume filled the car. Zoe blinked up at her aunt with wide eyes, curious but calm. The car moved forward. Aunt Celeste studied Nia closely, her worn clothes, tired face, rough hands. Then she asked the question Nia had avoided for 3 years. "What happened to you, and where is your husband?" Nia swallowed, her voice shaking. "It's a long story, Aunt Celeste." "Make it short," Nia whispered, overwhelmed, but Aunt Celeste shook her head. "This can't wait. What I'm about to tell you changes everything." Her voice grew calm but heavy. "It's about your parents." Those words made Nia's chest tighten. She had lost them years ago and thought she knew everything about their lives. Aunt Celeste continued gently. "They did pass away, that's true, but they also left you something you were never told about. That's why I came back." Nia listened in silence as her aunt revealed the truth. Her parents were not ordinary people at all. They had secretly built a powerful business and a vast fortune, but chose to raise Nia simply so she would grow up safe, strong, and independent. All of their wealth had been placed in a trust, with Aunt Celeste as the only person in charge. Then came the shock. Nia could receive everything only after 2 things happened. She got married and had a child. When Zoe was born, the conditions were met. "And that's when your husband's family made their move," Aunt Celeste said quietly. They tried to take control using false documents and lies, even claiming Nia was unwell so they could push her aside and take everything for themselves. But they failed. The money was protected. They pushed you out because they panicked, Aunt Celeste said. They thought if you disappeared, they could try again later. Tears streamed down Nia's face, not from weakness, but from rage. 3 years of suffering suddenly made sense. Aunt Celeste pulled her close. It ends now. Tomorrow, we go to the bank. Everything that belongs to you will be returned. Then she added softly, and that house they took? We're getting that back too. Nia looked into the dark window of the car and barely recognized herself. Her clothes were worn, but her eyes were on fire. No, Aunt, she said quietly. We're not just taking things back. We're taking our lives back. The air inside the house felt heavy and tense. An overflowing ashtray sat on the table while Mrs. Thorne paced the room, her face worn with stress. 3 years of living beyond their means had drained her spirit. We're running out of money, she snapped at her husband, who lowered his newspaper with a tired sigh. He tried to calm her, saying the new business just needed time, but she exploded. The house still had loans on it, the car wasn't paid off, and the money they grabbed years ago was nearly gone. She refused to return to a life without comfort. They all knew the truth. When they failed to take the main inheritance, they took everything else they could. Savings, gifts, even the old house that partly belonged to Nia. They traded it for this expensive lifestyle, but their spending was far greater than their income. Mrs. Thorne turned on her son. This is all because of you. Marcus, thin and pale, flinched. For 3 years he had lived like a stranger in his own home, working for his father without real pay, surviving on small handouts. If you'd been smarter, his mother shouted, if you'd pressured Nia harder, we wouldn't be in this situation. His father tried to step in, but Mrs. Thorne cut him off. Then came the words that shattered what little control they still had. Celeste is back in Atlanta. Silence fell. She had already gone to the bank. The transfer process had begun. Nia's daughter was now old enough. The conditions were met. Mrs. Thorne tried to laugh it off, pretending Nia had disappeared forever. But her husband knew better. If Celeste started looking, she would find her. And when she did, everything would come out. Forgery, deceit, theft. Their world was on the edge of collapse. Then Marcus laughed, a hollow sound that chilled the room. He suddenly stood and threw a glass across the floor. It shattered. For 3 years, he shouted, I've lived like a ghost. I left my wife. I left my child. For nothing. His voice broke as memories poured out. The hospital. Holding Zoe for the first time. Being dragged away. His phone taken. Lies forced into his ears. I saw her. Standing outside with my baby. He whispered, collapsing to the floor. And I did nothing. His mother tried to defend herself, but her voice trembled now. Marcus slammed his fist down. We're the ones who ruined everything. Just then, the doorbell rang. Once. Twice. They froze. The sound felt like a final warning. High above the city, in Aunt Celeste's apartment, everything was quiet and bright. Marble floors, glowing windows, and a view of Atlanta that looked unreal to Nia. Zoe, however, ran freely across the soft carpet, laughing as if she had always belonged there. Fresh clothes arrived. Warm food followed. Nia took a long shower, washing away 3 years of exhaustion. When she returned, Zoe was asleep on a wide sofa, hugging a large teddy bear. Nia sat across from her aunt, unable to touch the tea in front of her. So they said I was unstable, she whispered. They tried to use that story to take your child, Aunt Celeste replied calmly. Nia shook her head. They almost won. No, her aunt said quietly. They never could have, not even without me. Nia looked up. Your mother planned for this, Aunt Celeste continued. Your father built what you were meant to inherit. Your mother made sure it could never be taken. Then she leaned closer and said the words that changed everything again. To access what belongs to you, 3 keys are required. The first key is me, Aunt Celeste said calmly. Without my approval, nothing moves. Then she continued, the second key is you. Your fingerprint at the bank. That can't be copied. Nia listened, confused, until her aunt added, but there's a third key, the most important one, a key only your parents, your father, and I ever knew about. I don't know any secret, Nia whispered. Aunt Celeste gave a faint smile. Do you still wear the green jade pendant your mother gave you? Nia instinctively touched her chest. She had never taken it off, not even when she sold her wedding ring to buy milk for Zoe. She carefully pulled the necklace out. Hold it under the light, her aunt said. Nia turned the pendant slowly. At first, she saw nothing. Then, at the very tip, she noticed something carved almost invisibly into the stone. That's not just jewelry, Aunt Celeste explained. Inside that pendant is a microscopic code engraved by laser. It's the master access number to your entire inheritance. Without it, nothing can ever be unlocked. Nia stared at the necklace in disbelief, her eyes filled with tears. For 3 years you lived in hardship, Aunt Celeste said softly, yet the key to everything was with you the whole time. Your mother was protecting you, even after she was gone. Nia closed her fingers tightly around the pendant. Suddenly, it wasn't just a memory anymore. It was proof. It was power. Tomorrow, Aunt Celeste said firmly, we go to the bank. Everything will finally be transferred into your name. And after that, she paused, her voice cool, we will visit the house they are living in. Nia nodded, her eyes burning with quiet strength. You're safe here tonight, Aunt Celeste added. Rest. Your life changes tomorrow. She opened a large closet filled with elegant clothes. I prepared these for you. Tomorrow, you won't return as the woman they pushed away. You will return as the rightful owner. Nia looked at her reflection in the mirror. She no longer saw a broken woman. She saw someone ready to rise. I'm ready, she said firmly. That same night, in the house they had taken, the doorbell finally rang. Mr. Thorne opened the door to a courier who handed him a thick envelope from a law firm. His hands trembled as he signed. Inside was a legal notice. The house no longer belonged to them. They had 48 hours to leave. Failure to comply meant legal consequences. Mrs. Thorne collapsed in shock. She found us, Mr. Thorne whispered. Our accounts. They're already blocked. We have nothing left. Marcus let out a quiet laugh. It's over, he said hollowly. It's finally over. And for the first time in 3 years, the truth had caught up with them. Mr. Thorne spent the night pacing and making phone calls, but no one answered. Even his lawyer disappeared. The house felt sealed off from the world. Marcus, exhausted and empty, sat alone in his room, waiting for whatever was coming. Around 11 the next morning, a sleek black car stopped outside the gate. Marcus peeked through his window and felt his chest tighten. The door opened. Aunt Celeste stepped out first, calm and commanding. 2 sharply dressed attorneys followed. Then the final door opened. A woman stepped out in an ivory blazer and flowing trousers, a silk scarf around her neck. Dark glasses hid her eyes, but her posture was unshakable. It was Nia. She wasn't the woman he remembered. She was powerful, untouchable. Downstairs, the doorbell rang again, the same sound as the night before, but this time it felt final. Mr. Thorne opened the door. Nia stood between Aunt Celeste and the attorneys. She removed her glasses and looked him straight in the eyes. No fear, no sadness, only quiet resolve. Mrs. Thorne rushed forward with false warmth, arms open. Nia, my dear, where have you been? We were so worried. Nia raised her hand. Enough, she said evenly. I'm not here for your performance. I'm here to take back what's mine. One of the attorneys stepped forward and placed documents into Mr. Thorne's shaking hands. The message was short and clear. They had 24 hours to leave, return the car, return the credit cards, or face consequences. Mrs. Thorne burst into angry complaints, but the second lawyer calmly silenced her with proof, dates, transfers, and records she couldn't deny. The room went still. Marcus appeared on the stairs. "Nia," he whispered. She finally looked at him, saw what he had become. "I'm sorry," he said. She didn't shout. She didn't cry. "Sorry for what?" Nia asked quietly. "For abandoning me? For letting our child sleep in an empty room? For choosing silence over us?" Marcus fell apart in front of her. "I loved you." Nia's laugh was soft and bitter. "Love didn't protect us. Love didn't feed our child." He tried to explain. She raised her hand again. "Not here." She turned to Aunt Celeste. "Give us 5 minutes." They stepped outside. Nia walked deeper into the house that once belonged to her parents. Everything inside was new and unfamiliar. Marcus followed her. "Speak," she said without turning around. His voice trembled. "That night, I went to the hospital. I held Zoe in my arms." For the first time, Nia exhaled. Tears streamed down Marcus's face as he spoke. He said holding Zoe had been the happiest moment of his life, that he had promised himself he would protect both her and Nia forever. Hearing this only deepened the ache in Nia's chest. A small part of her had loved this man once, and that part was breaking all over again. Then Marcus continued. His parents had arrived at the hospital and dragged him away. They said there was an emergency at work. They took his phone when they got home and told him the plan had failed, that Aunt Celeste had blocked everything. In their panic, they decided the only way forward was to make Nia look unstable. They told him she knew about the fortune and planned to disappear with Zoe. "And you believed them?" Nia asked quietly. "Not at first," Marcus sobbed. He said he fought back, tried to return to the hospital, but his father locked him in his room. They told him it was for his own good. They warned him that Nia would leave the moment she got the money. Eventually, fear destroyed his judgment. "So you chose them," Nia said, "over your own family." Marcus dropped to his knees. He admitted he had been in the car that night. He had seen Nia standing in the street with Zoe in her arms, soaked and shaking. He said he tried to get out, but his parents stopped him and promised someone would come to help her. "No one came," Nia whispered. Marcus nodded through tears. He said he realized the truth the next day, but by then it was too late. For 3 years he lived surrounded by guilt and fear, unable to search for her. Every time he mentioned her name, his mother threatened to harm herself. He had been trapped. "Give me one more chance," he begged. "For Zoe. I'll testify against them. I'll do anything. Just let me see her." The room went silent. Nia looked at the broken man before her. His pain was real, but it couldn't undo the past. "Get up," she said. When he stood, she looked straight into his eyes. "You're right. You were weak. And your weakness was a choice. You chose your parents. You chose comfort over us. Nothing you say changes that." "She needs her father," Marcus whispered. "She needs a strong one," Nia replied. "Not someone who sacrifices her to protect himself. For 3 years I've been everything she needed. And we survived without you." Marcus tried to speak again, but Nia stopped him. "My lawyer gave you 2 options. I'm giving you a third. You can stand by your parents, or you can tell the truth. Not to win me back, not to meet Zoe, but to prove you still have something human inside you." She turned and walked away. Stepping outside felt like breathing after being buried alive. She didn't look back. Some chapters are not meant to be reopened. 24 hours passed like a blur for Nia, and like a nightmare for the Thorne family. Mrs. Thorne packed in fury. Mr. Thorne begged for help that never came. Marcus locked himself in his room, alone with his regrets. At 11 the next morning, the door opened again. This time, it wasn't Nia. It was a court officer, security, movers. Mrs. Thorne screamed and tried to block the way, but the court order in the lawyer's hand ended the argument. One by one, the things taken with stolen money were removed. Furniture, electronics, everything. Mrs. Thorne shouted that it all belonged to her. The lawyer calmly replied that every purchase could be traced, and just like that, their illusion collapsed in pieces. Quietly, precisely, completely. Within 3 hours, the house was stripped bare. Only a few overfilled suitcases with clothing remained. Neighbors watched behind their curtains, whispering as the image of a wealthy family collapsed in front of their eyes. Everything the Thornes once boasted vanished in a single morning. Mr. Thorne sank onto the empty floor, staring into space as if the life had been drained out of him. Mrs. Thorne, her voice rough from crying, whispered that they should leave, but there was nowhere left to go. They had nothing. Then Marcus came downstairs with a small backpack on his shoulders. His face was swollen from tears, but there was something new in his eyes. Resolve. His mother reached for him. "Let's go, son. We'll start again." Marcus gently pulled his hand away. "There is no we anymore. I'm going to take responsibility," he said quietly. "I'm going to the authorities." Mrs. Thorne broke down completely, screaming as he walked away. But Marcus didn't turn back once. He walked out of the gate and into a future his parents could never follow. His statement sealed their fate. With Marcus confirming everything, the case moved quickly. Forged documents, false medical records, stolen funds, all of it stood clear. No high-profile lawyer wanted to touch a case that was already lost. Their conviction made headlines. From Aunt Celeste's apartment, Nia turned off the television. She didn't feel joy. She felt closure. "They're gone," she said softly. "And Marcus?" she asked. "He accepted responsibility," Aunt Celeste replied. "His outcome will be lighter for cooperating." Nia nodded without emotion. Some bonds are not restored. They fade into memory. On the day the court read the final judgment, Nia chose to be there. She didn't come for satisfaction. She came to witness the end. She sat straight in a quiet gray suit, her face calm. The list of wrongdoing echoed through the room like thunder. Documents, deceptions, betrayal. The judgment came. Mr. Thorne received 12 years. Mrs. Thorne was given 15. She screamed, blamed, and cursed until security removed her. Nia never flinched. When Marcus's turn came, the room went quiet. Because truth has a cost. And he was about to pay it. The judge's voice echoed through the courtroom. Marcus would not be sent behind bars, but instead placed under strict supervision and ordered to complete years of service helping children who had no parents of their own. The gavel struck the desk. It was finished. Mrs. Thorne had to be escorted out, still shouting in fury. Mr. Thorne walked as if his spirit had been emptied. Marcus remained seated long after everyone else stood up. He was free, but nothing about his life felt free anymore. He had lost his family, his dignity, and the woman he loved. Nia rose quietly. She didn't want to stay a moment longer. She wanted to go home, breathe clean air, and hold Zoe. As she stepped into the crowded hallway, reporters rushed forward, but her lawyer blocked them. Then she heard her name. "Nia." Marcus ran toward her, breathless and shaking. She stopped. "Thank you," he whispered through tears. "You must have helped reduce my sentence." Nia shook her head. "I didn't ask for anything, Marcus. Your sentence came from your choice to finally tell the truth. That is something you earned yourself." He hesitated, then asked the question she had been expecting. "Can I see Zoe?" Nia didn't answer immediately. She looked at him calmly. "No," she said gently. Marcus broke down. "She's my child, too. I've already lost everything. Why are you so cold?" "It's not about being cold," Nia replied. "It's about protecting her. She grew up without you. Her world is peaceful now. I won't bring anything into her life that could hurt that peace." "I can change," he said desperately. "You need to heal first," Nia answered. "Focus on becoming someone strong, someone worthy of trust. That takes time." Marcus whispered, "When will I ever see her?" "When she is old enough to understand," Nia said quietly. "And when she asks about you, I will tell her the truth. Then she will decide. That choice will be hers, not mine." Marcus lowered his head. He knew it was the only fair answer. Nia turned away. "Goodbye, Marcus." She walked into the sunlight without looking back. The air felt warm against her face, as if the city itself was welcoming her home. 2 years later, the house on Eagle Street was no longer a place of sorrow. Ivory walls shone in the sun. Roses climbed along the fence. Laughter echoed through the garden. Nia had changed too. She now ran the company her parents had built, standing confidently at the head of the boardroom. Calm, focused, and respected, she led with fairness and strength. She never forgot what it meant to struggle, and she made sure people under her care would never feel forgotten. When work ended, her time belonged to Zoe. Every afternoon she waited for the school bus, and when a little girl ran into her arms calling "Mommy," the world felt complete. They baked cookies with Grandma Celeste. They watched the sky change colors. They told stories and dreamed out loud. Zoe never asked about her father. Her life was full. Elsewhere in the city, Mr. and Mrs. Thorne lived a very different reality. In a narrow room with cold walls, they sat in silence. Mrs. Thorne whispered bitter words. Mr. Thorne only sighed. Some people never learn. But Nia did, and that made all the difference. They were no longer held just by walls, but by their own bitterness. That was the real punishment they could never escape. And in another part of the city, life went on quietly. Inside a small, crowded coffee shop, a man in a worn flannel shirt wiped down tables. That man was Marcus. When his probation ended, he didn't return to the world of business. He chose something simpler, quieter. He became the manager of this little cafe, rented a modest room, and lived a life built on routine and reflection. His days were filled with work, long walks, and silence. He accepted that the most important thing he had ever lost would never return. One afternoon, a customer forgot a magazine on a table. Marcus picked it up and froze. On the cover was Nia, strong, confident, unbreakable. He looked at her photo for a long moment and whispered, "You made it, Nia." Then he closed the magazine and went back to work. Back on Eagle Street, the evening sun painted the sky in soft gold and purple. Nia gently pushed Zoe on the swing. "Higher, Mommy," Zoe laughed. Nia smiled and pushed again. She looked at her daughter. She looked at her home. She looked at the sky glowing above them. 3 years ago, she had been standing at a bus stop with nothing but exhaustion and fear. Now she stood in her own garden, whole again. Her life wasn't perfect. She was raising a child on her own. She carried painful memories, but she was complete. Her happiness didn't come from wealth or from a man. It came from her strength, from love, from survival. A new chapter had begun for Nia and Zoe, and this time, the sky was clear. I'm really glad you stayed with me until the end of this story. If you enjoyed it, you can support the channel with a like and a subscription. Write in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. I love reading every message. And now a couple of my most popular stories are appearing on your screen. Pick one and enjoy.